Chapter 1. Introduction. This video is for the woman who is burned out, knows it, and is looking at Portugal thinking, I want this, but I'm not ready to retire. I'm not ready to commit forever. I just need a way to try it without betting everything on the decision. That woman exists. I know because I get messages from her every week. And the answer she's looking for is the D7 visa. Used not as a retirement tool, but as a strategic exit ramp. If you appreciate me making this type of content, gently tap that like button. Here we go. Chapter 2. What the D7 visa actually allows beyond retirement. Let me start by reframing something that I think holds a lot of Gen X women back from even researching the D7 visa in the first place. Most of the content out there about this visa, including some of mine, talks about it in the context of retirement, passive income, leaving the workforce permanently. And because of that framing, if you're not retired and not planning to be anytime soon, you might assume this visa isn't for you. The D7 visa doesn't care whether you've retired or not. What it cares about is whether you can support yourself financially in Portugal without working for a Portuguese employer. That's it. That's the requirement. And there are more ways to meet that requirement than most people realize. Chapter 3. Why 3 years is the perfect test drive window. So what does the D7 actually allow? It gives you the right to live legally in Portugal for an initial period. And here's the part most people don't focus on, of up to 2 years, renewable for successive 3-year periods after that. Which means from the moment you land, you have a substantial window of time to actually live this life, not just visit it, to find out whether the pace suits you, whether the culture fits, whether your budget works in practice, not just in a spreadsheet, whether this is somewhere you want to stay, or a beautiful chapter you're ready to close when the time comes. That is a test drive. A real, generous, fully lived test drive. When I arrived in Porto on my D7 visa, I gave myself the full initial period to find out whether this was right for me. I didn't arrive with a permanent decision already made. I arrived with an open question and enough time to answer it honestly. That framing changed everything about how I experienced those early years. I wasn't committed to forever. I was committed to showing up fully and seeing what this life actually was. And what I found over that time was that Portugal wasn't just passing the test. It was becoming home. But that's my story. Yours might look different. And that's exactly the point of the test drive. Chapter 4. What a realistic test drive budget looks like. Now let's talk about what a realistic budget actually looks like for someone doing this as a career break rather than a retirement. Because the numbers matter and I want to give you an honest picture. In my experience living in Porto, a comfortable test drive budget, one that covers rent in a decent neighborhood, good food, healthcare, transport, and enough discretionary spend to actually explore the country and enjoy the life, sits in the range of 2,000 to 2,500 euros a month. That's not a survival budget. That's not a luxury budget. That's a real, comfortable, unhurried life in one of the best cities in Europe. Now put that number next to what you're currently spending in the US rent or mortgage, car payments, health insurance premiums, the cost of just existing in a high-cost American city, and do the math honestly. For a lot of Gen X women, 2,000 to 2,500 euros a month in Portugal is not more than what they're spending now. In many cases, it's significantly less. And what it buys in terms of quality of life, pace, and daily experience is not comparable. Chapter 5. Midpoint Resource Break. Quick break. If you want to see the full line-by-line breakdown of what I actually spend living in Porto each month, I have a dedicated video on exactly that. Link is in the description and pinned comment below. Chapter 6. What income sources work for a career break application? Now the income question. Because this is where the career break framing gets practical. If you're not retired, what do you show the Portuguese consulate as your proof of income for the D7 application? The honest answer is that a mix of savings and passive income is your strongest position for a career break application. Savings demonstrate that you have a financial runway, that you can support yourself for the duration of your stay without needing to work in Portugal. Passive income. rental income, dividends, investment returns, anything that flows in regularly without requiring active employment. Strengthens that picture further because it shows ongoing financial stability rather than a fixed pool that depletes over time. What you don't need is a pension or a social security check. You don't need to be retired. You need to demonstrate that your financial situation, whatever form it takes, meets the threshold Portugal requires, which is currently €920 a month at the minimum. Though showing meaningfully more than that gives your application the strongest possible foundation. One important thing to note. The D7 does not currently permit you to work remotely for non-Portuguese clients as your primary income source without additional visa considerations. If remote work is your main income stream, Portugal's digital nomad visa may be a more appropriate pathway. I'd always recommend verifying the current rules directly with the Portuguese consulate covering your state before you apply, as these details do get updated. Chapter 7. What you're actually testing during those 3 years. So what are you actually testing during those first years? More than just whether you like Portugal, though that's part of it. You're testing whether the slower pace is something your nervous system can actually settle into, or whether the novelty wears off and the restlessness returns. You're testing whether your budget works in reality, not just on paper. You're testing whether you can build enough of a social life here to sustain you. You're testing whether the practical realities, the bureaucracy, the language barrier, the distance from people you love, are things you can navigate and live with over time. Those are not small tests. And 3 years is genuinely enough time to get honest answers to all of them. Not vacation answers. Not holiday answers. Real, lived, this is my actual life answers. Chapter 8. How to know if Portugal passed the test. How do you know if Portugal passed the test? I think you know the same way I knew. Not because everything was perfect. It wasn't. Not because every day was easy, it wasn't. But because when you honestly asked yourself whether you wanted to stay, the answer kept coming back yes. The place kept earning it. The life kept feeling more right than the one you left. That's not a complicated metric, but it's the one that matters. Chapter 9. Final thoughts. And if you're still on the fence about whether the psychological side of this transition is something you're ready for, whether your brain can actually make the shift from hustle to stillness, I made a video on exactly that. I stopped the rat race at 50. Here is what it did to my mind. Click right here to watch it.